Undercover Economist, the Sunday Times bestseller book written by Tim Harford and published in 2006. Tim Harford was a journalist and editorial writer at Financial Times and was also a presenter of Trust Me, I Am an Economist, a popular talk show in BBC Two. In this book, Harford takes a look at ordinary, everyday activities through the eyes of an economist to able us in using the investigative tools of the economist. Chapter 1. Who pays for your coffee? This chapter tells us why coffee shops like Starbucks sell coffee at a very high price margins, especially in the busy locations in the major cities such as Tokyo, New York, or London. You know why? The reason is because of the power of scarcity. Scarce location is behind the high price.
Can you imagine why coffee shops like Starbucks, Stampton Coffee Roasters, AMT Coffee, and Costa Coffee sell coffee at a very high price margins? Especially in the busy locations like airport, railway, or bus station? The reason for high price is the high rent applied to them, because the shop is located in the scarce, prime, attractive, busy, or business spot, which is standard among coffee shops' competitors. In this case, premium location is the power of scarcity essence, where if there's a profitable deal to be done between somebody who has something which can be replaced, then the profits will go to the owner of the unique or scarce resource.
Chapter 2. What supermarkets don't want you to know. Supermarket always has strategies to maximize their profit. To gauge us as a target price, they usually use a group target strategy, where people in groups who pay more are usually the people who can afford more and careless about the price.
Business with scarcity power cannot force us to pay unlimited prices to their products, but they can choose from a variety of strategies to make us pay more. Supermarket always has strategies to maximize their profit. To gauge us as a price target, instead of using a unique target strategy, they usually use a group target strategy, where people in groups who pay more are usually people who can afford more and care less about price. Sale and discounts are the examples of the group's target strategy. So, to become a savvier consumer, Harvard gave us two advices. First, make sure that your wallet is the ultimate shopping decision basis. And second, if you want a bargain, don't try to find a cheap store. Just shop wisely.
Chapter 3. Perfect Markets and the World Truth. In this chapter, we will see what truth means in economic terms, how it leads to efficiency, and why efficiency is good. We'll also explore efficiency's shortcomings, how efficiency isn't always fair. That's why we have taxes.
Perfect markets and the world of truth. There's a basic truth incorporated into any system of prices. The truth comes from the fact that stores and consumers do not have to buy or sell at a given price. They can always opt out. In a free market, people don't buy things that are worth less to them than the asking price. And people don't sell things that are worth more to them than the asking price. The reason is simple. Nobody is forcing them to, which means that most transactions that happen in a free market improve efficiency because they make both parties better off, or at least not worse off, and don't harm anyone else. The result of a set of perfectly competitive markets interconnected. First, companies are making things the right way. Second, companies are making the right things. Third, Things are being made in the right proportion. And fourth, things are going to the right people. If the right things are being made right in the right quantities and going to the people who value the most, there is no room for any gains in efficiency. Or to put it in another way, you can't get more efficient than a perfectly competitive market. Society relies heavily on free markets. Any modern democracy also provides goods outside the market system. An example, local police force and public school, which are paid by a non-market system of taxation. While the perfectly competitive market is perfectly efficient, efficiency is not enough to ensure a fair society. We need something more than efficiency. What we need is a way to make our economies both efficient and fair.
Chapter 4. Crosstown Traffic. In this chapter, we will explore more about market failures in terms of externalities that caused by traffic congestion and pollution. We'll also explore ways to deal with such externalities efficiently and fairly by using such principles mentioned earlier in Chapter 3.
4. Crosstown traffic. There are three conditions where market fails to live up ideals of perfection. First, market fail to work well in the face of scarcity power, as we saw in Chapter 2. Second, markets also fail to work well if some decision makers lack information. This will be discussed further in Chapter 5. Finally, markets fail to work well if some people make decisions that affect bystanders. Economists call the side effect an externality because it lies outside the original decision. This chapter will deal more with the third cause of market failure, which is the externality issues. Washington, D.C., London, Tokyo, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Bangkok, and indeed any of the world's great cities, are full of cars, buses, and trucks. Those vehicles seriously damage the happiness of innocent bystanders by making traffic congestion, polluting the air, noise, accidents, and barrier effect. There are several options to reduce traffic congestion in big cities. First, raise the upfront fee for driving or raise the average cost per driving. Second, providing more buses, better trains, cycle routes, pedestrian crossing, so people using private cars tempted to move to public transport. Third, scrap the upfront fee and charge people for the trips they drive or increase the marginal cost of driving. All of these options could be expected to reduce traffic congestion to some extent, perhaps to an important extent, but it is option 3 that attempts to deal with the cause of the problem. Drivers do not live in the world of truth. That is, they do not pay the true cost of their actions, including the externalities or side effects that affect bystanders. Option 3 tries to make them pay that cost. We might call it an externality charge. The idea of an externality charge for inconvenience inflicted on bystanders is not to discourage everyone from doing anything that might inconvenience anyone else. It is to get them to take into account the inconvenience they cause to others. It must reflect the cost of the externality, but no more. Whatever level of externality charge turns out to be appropriate, if it is to reflect the truth, it should vary according to time and place. In answer to the charge that externality charges are unfairly redistributive, they are not aimed at poor people, but at voluntary activities. If you decide to stop causing trouble for others, you don't have to pay. The conclusion is that congestion charging not only improves efficiency, it also redistributes money by raising more tax from the rich. Another example of externality charges is in reducing pollution by auctioning sulfur permits and carbon permits. It proved that by auctioning these permits, gradually people are more concerned about the pollution and begin some efforts to control the pollution.
Chapter 5, The Inside Story. Joyce Arclov published a revolutionary paper in 1970 that the professor realized quite how profound and dramatic the problem might be. It examined how the quality of good trade in the market can degrade in the presence of information asymmetry between buyer and seller. Market for the used car, variety of quality from the worst, called lemon, the cars that always breaking down, and to the very best the most reliable car, called the plum. The seller know the quality of their cars, but suppose buyer can tell which used car the lemon and which are the plum. Since seller can tell more than the buyer, this is model of asymmetric information. Since the buyer can tell difference between lemon and the plum, the buyer won't be willing to pay more than average quality car price worth. But since the buyer willing to pay average quality price, the seller of the highest quality cars, the plum, will exit the market. When the highest quality car exit the market, however, the average quality car fall will reduce the price the buyer willing pay even more. That caused the seller on the next car, the next quality of high used car, to drop from the market as well. At the end, sometimes called sparrow market collapse, the buyer would not buy of any used car that offer for sale. Because the problem is caused by uneven graphs of the fact, economists tend to call it asymmetric information, ripping the wall of truth apart. This imbalance in information can completely destroy perfect market. The market has developed solutions for asymmetric information. Solutions like vehicle history reports, hiring professional inspection, to reduce imbalance in information. Chapter 6, Rational Insanity, a Paradox. Economists study rational behavior. The more rational the behavior of stock market investors, the more erratic the behavior of the stock market becomes. We learn how market flow unexploited opportunities offer big reward to any investor. Rational people would buy shares today if it's obvious that they will go up tomorrow, and sell them if it was obvious that they will fall. But that means that any forecast that share will obviously rise tomorrow will be wrong. Share will be rise today instead because people will buy them, and keep buying them until they are no longer so cheap that they will obviously rise tomorrow. In fact, rational investors should be able to second guess any predictable movements in the stock market or in the price of any particular share. If it's predictable, then, given the money at stake, they will be predicted. But that means that if investors really are rational, there won't be any predictable share movement at all. All the predictability should be sucked out of the stock market very quickly, because all the trend will be anticipated. The only thing that is left is unpredictable news, as a result of the fact that only random news move share prices. Those prices, and in the case measuring the stock market as a whole, should fluctuate completely at random. Mathematicians call the behavior a random walk, equally like on any day to rise as to fall. Should we believe the random walk theory? We certainly should not expect it to be absolutely true. If it was, that would be a paradox. Practically, informed investors produce a random market, but random market doesn't reward anybody for becoming perfectly informed. It would not be worth anybody while to invest time, an effort to analyze the market or uncover new information if everybody else was doing the same.
Chapter 7. The Man Who Knew the Value of Nothing. This chapter telling us about what the game theory is and its implementation in action. This chapter came up with the quote from Oscar Wilde: "Someone who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing." This quote is Oscar Wilde's definition of a cynic. But in the present time, this quote is commonly applied to economists. Imagine that you want to sell your house, and for that purposes, you hire an economist to help you out to get a big income from it. But what happened is not like you want to. You desire 300,000, but with the bidding you get only 3,000. It is disaster. Meanwhile, your next door neighbor also decided to sell his house by engage a different economist. Your neighbor is also expected 300,000, but the bidding just keep on going up and he ends with 2.3 million. The real estate business is no longer constituted of bricks and mortar, but of thin air, wavelength of radio spectrum. These things are so desirable for telecommunication company. Unfortunately, not all the consultants knew what the current situation is. This wasn't done of luck, but more about capabilities to see cleverness in some cases, and to see blundering in others. A mathematician, John Van Neumann, he is the founder of game theory. A game theories is any activity in which your prediction is of what another person will do affect what you decided to do. Poker, nuclear war, and law of attraction are the examples. In game theory, the important things to deal is how you can predict move of your opponent to get a beneficial outcome for your own purposes. A Nobel Prize winner, John Nash, had a nice revolutionary new way to predict a game's outcome by use a well-understood mathematical application. That is what happened in the lesson of 3G spectrum right auction in United States and United Kingdom. In UK, the price started from 300,000 pounds sterling. In first day, the bidding came up with 250,000 pounds sterling. At last, for the whole story, the bid stopped in total revenue 29 billion pounds sterling. And for the other withdrawals, the government get 22.5 billion pounds sterling. And this process had become the biggest auction in modern history at that time. Chapter 8. Why poor countries are poor. This chapter is talk about why poor countries are poor. Even the tendency will be poorer. Harvard is trying to telling us about the condition of poverty of countries, with Cameroon as an example. Cameroon is very poor country. The average Cameroonian is 8 times poorer than the average citizen of the world, and almost 50 times poorer than the typical American. With a lot of natural resources they had, Cameroon had been continued to improve their country. They tried to release themselves from the poverty. Economists used to think that economic wealth came from a combination of man-made resources like road, factories, machines, human resources like education and research, and technological resources like technical know-how or simply high-tech machinery. With this, if well implemented, poor countries will grow into the rich country in suitable time, and Cameroon surely already tried to do it, but they are not succeed. In order to patch up the traditional way, the economists combine their diminishing return model with increasing returns model. And the new model said the more you have, the faster you grow. From a theory of investment, whether through a big push, many poor countries have managed to grow quickly over the past few decades. The example were Taiwan, South Korea, and China. But the question is, why have so many others, like Cameroon, been left behind? The answer is because of the corruption. In 1990, Cameroon was the most corrupt country in the world by Transparency International survey. In 2001, they were success reducing to become number 5 from top list, but people were negatively thinking that it's happened because of the corruptor was just sleep and lack of the focusing on stealing money. The corruption in Cameroon is so massively happened at every level. It is not surprise because it was politically protected. So, To raise up the poor country to become rich, it suggested that every government leader of the poor country should developing their country as fast as they can. And beside that, the most important thing is no corruption behavior.
In chapter 9, Beer, Price and Globalization, Harvard starting the chapter with story about Brugge. This is very wealthy town in Belgium because their ability in trade at 13th century. And then they collapse after their port sealed up and no merchant ship can port in port. The greatest economic power in Western Europe replaced by their neighbor town, Antwerp, that's still connected to the world via the Scheldt River. The lesson is, if you would like to be rich, then links with the rest of the world. Be global.
Globalization will never homogenize what we have, not when ideas are always appearing and adding fresh ingredient to the world. The globalization will mix many parts from all of the world and create new shapes. Globalization is about trading the comparative advantage. For example, Chinese wages are so much lower than USA, so China can make television much more cheaper than USA can. But USA also exports soybean to China for about 15 billion US dollar in 2012. Of course, because USA produce soybean better than Chinese. Globalization allows foreign investment. Foreign investment is widely recognized to be good for economic growth in poor countries. It is an excellent way for them to create jobs, learn cutting-edge techniques. The foreign direct investment also create jobs for many people and create multiplier effect in other sectors like property, commerce and also informal sector. Globalization is also green for planet. One of simple reason is investment need efficient, and efficient mean using less resources. It means goods for planet. The research by Wheeler in China using data from 1987 to 1995 shows that the increasing of foreign investment significantly impact on reducing the air pollution. Overall, in our opinion, globalization still has possibility to harm poor person because in fact, the benefit of globalization only enjoyed by several people. According to the problem-solving theory, we need good governance to ensure that globalization doesn't harm poor people. No political system is perfect, but democracies tend to favor trade more than others because lowering trade barriers is good for the ordinary person.
Final chapter, how China grow rich. This chapter tells us about how China become wealthier. Reform in agriculture, good planning, great investment, market adoption and connecting to the world is the key of China's growth. After Deng Xiaoping reform, China is not rich, but they become richer faster than any country in history.
For example, Shanghai. In just a decade, the builders of Shanghai had put up a fair imitation of Manhattan. It made Londoners feel like country bumpkins. Remember, for most of the 20th century, China was poorer than Cameroon. Under Mao Zedong Revolution era, Mao conducted economic policy based on the hidden premise that if people tried hard, the impossible would happen. Yield alone was sufficient. But of course, this policy is failed. But after Deng Xiaoping with China, the condition is extremely changing. Just 5 years under Deng Xiaoping, the change in China's economy was incredible. Agricultural output had grown by 40%. To improve agriculture, he had to get the incentive right. He started by raising the price paid by the state for crops by nearly a quarter. Another approach is subcontracting land to individual households. Households who were renting land from collectives had every incentive to work hard and think of smarter ways of doing things because they were rewarded directly for their success. Besides good agricultural strategy, Deng also set up strategy in investment. All sustained development needs capital and capital comes from investment. While a market economy cannot simply decide to save and invest more, a socialist economy like China can and usually does. Almost all investment was done either by the government or by state-owned corporations. 15 years after Deng came to power, returns on investment had quadrupled. For every 100 yuan invested, China's annual output grew by 72 yuan. Each investment paid for itself after just 500 days. The Chinese economic miracle was not really about privatization. What mattered was not who owned the companies, but that the companies were forced to compete in a relatively free market, driving down scarcity power and bringing in the information and incentive of the world of truth. Finally, China chose to link to the rest of the world because of three advantages. First, China could tap into world market for labor-intensive goods like toys, shoes, and clothes. Second, the foreign currency could be spent on raw material and on new technology to develop the economy. Finally, by inviting foreign investors in, the Chinese could learn modern production and business technique.
After all, we conclude that by reading this book, you can open horizons and you will become more sensitive to things around you in connection with economic activities. One thing that we show as a minor minus of this book is its diction. For people who are not economists, understanding some of the economic principles explained in this book takes some thought and may require a repeated reading. But overall, this is a good read for everyone, economists and also non-economists. Thank you.